Houston, we have a problem. Hi. Welcome back to Brothers of the Arcana. I am Alex Aldean.
I am David Ferrigno, or Dave Ferrigno.
Either of those is great. And our guest today is
Father Pat Cuntrera.
Father Pat Cuntrera, who is a good friend of ours, happens to be in the same fraternity as us. And I won't say which fraternity that is unless Father Pat is comfortable with that being out there.
Oh, very comfortable. I'll give all the people in the audience a little hint.
That might give it away a little bit.
So yes, Father Pat is he is a priest of the Catholic persuasion and the well, I should say the old Catholic Church, correct? So tell us a little bit about what that means, and then we'll move into a couple of the background questions and then other stuff. So yeah, go right ahead.
Well, I am a Catholic priest, but I'm a priest from the Western Apostolic Orthodox Church. Okay, so it's the Orthodox Church, and it happens to be a branch in the United States of America. And when you say old Catholic Church, you are correct. It is the Orthodox Church is one of the oldest faiths in this world. So yes, it is the old Catholic Church, and it does come down from the old Catholic Church.
So you are you part of the Byzantine Rite Orthodox Church then, or is it a different sort of path?
It's a little bit of a different path. See, and if I can have a moment to explain.
Absolutely.
See, after Christ resurrected and Pentecost, and he breathed the Holy Spirit onto his apostles and ascended back into heaven, for about the first maybe 50 years, everybody thought of Christianity as a sect of the Jewish faith.
Right. Okay.
Eventually, people realized there's a lot of differences here, especially since a lot of the Jewish people were not able to accept Jesus Christ, as the Son of God, as the Messiah. So what happened is it became its own faith, what was referred to as the ancient faith. It was one Christian faith worldwide. And then there was something called the Great Schism. This ancient faith split off into three different directions. One, Emperor Constantine of Rome developed the Roman Catholic Church. There is the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Western Orthodox Church. Now, between Eastern and Western Orthodox, not really any difference. The orthodoxy, the faith is the same. But as my Archbishop says, you don't have to learn another language to love it and appreciate it.
Also true. Also true. So does your church have a pope or a patriarch? Does it have a head of it, so to speak?
Now, what happens is we do acknowledge the Pope,
Mm-hmm.
and we are recognized by the Roman Catholic Church, but we're not bound to him.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we don't have to believe he's infallible. My eternal salvation is not based on whether or not I believe he is perfect. So we acknowledge him, but we don't listen to him. The highest you can go is Archbishop. And when there's a problem that needs to be solved, they bring a synod, a gathering of clerics together, and the archbishops figure on a solution. Now, there's one archbishop that is slightly above all others, the highest rank, and that person is referred to as the primate. And I say this, and I got to be careful when I use the word, because people, when they hear primate, they think gorilla, orangutan. No, primate means...
Is he a big man?
Prime person.
Right.
What's that?
Is he a big man?
Taller than me, but thin.
So not gorilla per se.
No. And trust me, a man of infinite patience, because, well, he has to work with me. So this primate
It's been said before,
is
Father Pat. It's
in
been
charge.
before. No, I'm kidding. That's fantastic.
Hey, I've always said this. I don't play holier than thou.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I wanted to. Oh, did we lose you? Are you still? There you are. Okay.
No, I'm still here.
Got you there. Okay. So wanted to touch base. Well, first of all, I credit you, and I have to thank you for this very much. I credit you for introducing me to Brian Bowden originally. I had a wonderful relationship with Brian as a friend and as a mentor of sorts, and as a brother Mason. I've worked with him professionally with some of his remote viewing talents, and I'm just and he had a wonderful episode with us that you may have seen on the show. He was our third guest. So we do really want to thank you for that. And we were very excited to get you on the show as well, to get your thoughts and your viewpoints on a lot of esoteric things. So thank you.
First of all, thank you. I'm honored and humbled.
Absolutely.
And Brian is a wonderful friend and a wonderful person. And I'm very happy that the two of you were able to work together.
Absolutely. So some of the questions I think that we have today are fostering on. So one of the things, a more recent friend is Chuck Dunning. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He wrote a book called Contemplative Masonry. His latest book is Rosecroy Oratory, and just a wonderful guy. He comes from the southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite, and has he's attained some level of notoriety as an author on mystical teachings, on contemplative study. So that's meditation, contemplation, all kinds of other things. And actually, I was just showing Dave a mandala that I got recently, a Buddhist mandala. Obviously, it has the swastikas there because the swastikas were originally a Buddhist symbol, not a Nazi symbol. They were appropriated, I should say, misappropriated. But the Chuck wrote a book called Rosecroy Oratory that I'm reading now, and I got a copy of it for Dave. He calls himself an esoteric Christian, or a Christian esotericist. I love that. I love that because I think maybe that's what all of us are that are sort of walking this path. But I wanted to just ask you your opinion, and that's where we're going to get into some of these things of what is esoterics, what is metaphysics, what is the supernatural, what are men's issues, because I think that's part of the big thing facing our fraternity, and how they all work with being a priest, being a Freemason, being a brother, and all of that stuff. So without further ado, what role do you believe that metaphysics plays in understanding the divine and our relationship with God?
Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge the metaphysical. That is what is beyond the physical world. I mean, if you have absolutely no belief in metaphysical, then how can you believe an all-powerful, an almighty God that is, beyond? We can't see him. We can't walk over and shake his hand. He is beyond our physical world. So if we have no belief in the metaphysical, how can we believe in God? If we have no belief in mysticism whatsoever, then how can we believe in the mysticisms of the church? So you need at least a healthy respect for those to actually have faith.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Do you interpret the concept of the soul in esoteric Christianity and well, I'm sorry, I should better say, how do you interpret the concept of the soul in esoteric Christianity, and what implications does that have for our understanding of life after death?
Well, first of all, if you go nowhere beyond the physical, And I remember a movie a few years ago called 17 Ounces. Because at the time of death, there is a slight weight loss in the human body. And that weight loss is our eternal soul leaving our bodies. There is something within us, an energy, our actual being. That is, it's not this body. This body is just, using some Shakespeare. It's our mortal coil. It's what holds us to this dimension. So there is a part of us that is from God that will live on long after, these bodies cease to function. So there is that part of us. And if you look at all the worldwide religions, they all believe that there is some part of us that leaves our body after death, goes to heaven, becomes at one with the universe, regardless, that there's some part of us that goes on when the body ceases to exist.
Interesting. But you obviously, being a priest, you espouse a certain, and I don't mean large O Orthodox, but small O Orthodox understanding of Christianity. Although, how do you see Christianity in this sense? In other words, do you see it in the traditional, here's toeing the line of the way the Catholics or the Orthodox believe, or do you bring a sort of additional esoteric understanding to that practice?
Well, okay. As far as the teachings of the Orthodox Church, the Ten Commandments, the Bible, we, of course, I attend to those. I believe in those. But I have another aspect to my personal Christianity, because I believe, and I'll refer to charity as applied Christianity. So you can't be Christian, go to church, and go back out into the world and ignore the needs of those around you and be an unkind person to those around you. So, and I also believe that God gave us so much, okay? And that, you don't see very many Catholic priests that believe in stones. So many Catholic priests that use a Buddhist mala to pray, that believe in, shielding their home against evil. And I believe, God gives us a lot of things. He gives us ways to protect ourselves, ways to keep ourselves healthy. If you look at the book of Ezekiel, all of the guidelines that are, kosher and halal, they're the same thing. And things that we couldn't comprehend millennia ago, God gave us to keep us healthy. So, it's not just understanding and following, it's seeing all the other things that God gave to us to understand, and also what he gives us to be better Christians. I mean, okay, so a little bit of a giveaway here. You know that I belong to certain Masonic groups, okay? Certain groups that recruit Masons, but are not necessarily Masonic.
Yes.
I am actually I am a Rosicrucian, and I am also a Martinist. And the Martinists have an interesting philosophy. Okay, they believe in prayer and meditation to bring us together to become one with our Creator. And some of the things that we do there, and you definitely have to have a mind for the esoteric. I show up there one day and we're doing energy work. And what I've noticed, like for example, doing the energy work. Well, one, and I know I got to wear a hat when I go outside now because, the third eye is coming through. My energy as far as a healer, people that are sensitive to energies, like they can feel me flaring up. So since I like to heal people, this made me better at being a Christian. Okay. Having a home that is shielded from evil, understanding the demonic. Okay. knowing that makes me a better Christian, helps me to protect myself and others from evil. So, having this esoteric knowledge, I think everybody should have at least a little bit of that knowledge.
Well, a little knowledge can make you pretty dangerous, right? So maybe the more knowledge we have, the better off we might be on that one. So let me ask you this: how does can you share any insights that you have on the significance of the mystical experiences within the Christian tradition? So where does Christian mysticism go? I mean, you started on talking about a little bit of it, some of the demons and such, but yeah, where does it really go? What are the historical aspects and kind of where does it go? Yeah.
Well, those mystical aspects, those things that a lot of people don't quite understand. Well, first of all, the greatest mystical experience that a lot of people may not even take seriously, they just do it because it's habit, is receiving the sacrament of Holy Communion. It's one of the biggest mystical experiences that a person could ever experience. It's literally God on earth. Okay. And, I actually had a talk one time. It was a brother Mason, Italian, brought up Roman Catholic, and he actually said that the sacrament of Holy Communion was symbolic. And then he stepped back, and I don't know what kind of a look I gave him, but he said he didn't know how to answer me because it's not symbolic. Okay? Think about this, that the priest has the ability, because of that ordination, and I'm going to talk to you about that ordination in a couple minutes, to bless, as a receptacle for Almighty God, to bring down the Holy Spirit and imbue that Eucharist, that bread and that wine, to make it body and blood. And it is truly mystical because, even afterwards, if you were to examine that little piece of styrofoam, I mean that Holy Communion.
No,
Sorry, I still don't know.
Jesus.
For the life of me, I still don't know how they call it bread.
So let me ask you this then: you don't use actual bread? I mean, I know the Orthodox, for instance, they have a chalice, right? And they have the wine in the chalice.
What we do is, in the Roman Catholic Church, yes, everybody's understands that little round disc, the Eucharist, which is supposed to be bread.
Right.
In the Orthodox Church, and I went to Long Island to visit my Archbishop, and he actually did an online church service, and he actually had a very special loaf of bread. Is actually physically bread, and it did have an imprint on top. Part of that imprint was a circle for the concept of eternity. Yeah. So we took this bread, and he consecrated it, and as we went up for Holy Communion, we went out and we took a little piece and we received it, and we also received the wine.
Got it.
So we used the bread. Now, and I'm going to tell you something that I've given, for example, for the Knights Templar, the Commandery, in Freemasonry, last year I gave the Sunday morning church service. Okay. No pressure. But I'm doing it in front of my Grand Commander, all the Grand Staff, and I'm going to offer the sacrament, something they don't normally get. I'm doing it as a full ecumenical Christian service. So considering that people might have allergies, I'll be honest. I consecrated grape juice, and I consecrated gluten-free crackers. Okay. And I blessed, asked the Holy Spirit to descend upon these gifts, and I used that for the sacraments. And I will be honest, in my emergency case, that I have saltine crackers and a juice box. Okay, because if I have to run out in the middle of the night to do last rites, part of last rites is the sacrament. Yeah. So I will use these things, and I have reason for it, and I'm not mocking, and I'm not going to use a cookie, and I'm not going to use Hawaiian punch. Okay, but I can use.
What about Capri Sun?
With whole.
No.
What's that?
No. Not Capri. You can't use Capri Sun either. No juices outside of, let's say, just typical grape juice, right?
It has to be like one of those grape juice, 100% juice, one of those things, not one of those things they call juice that they give kids.
Right.
So, but I will use those because, and I do it in full respect, but it's something like I don't want somebody to have a gluten allergy, and I don't want to have to run someplace in the middle of the night to get something I can consecrate with the body and blood of Jesus Christ.
Sure. So let me ask you this then. Do you think that metaphysical practices and beliefs, do you think that they're essential for a deeper understanding of Christianity? In other words, I have friends who are, and we all have friends who are evangelical Christians, right? Lovely people. I think a lot of them have very deep faith. But, you go to their church, well, the one I'm thinking of, which is a wonderful church. It starts out with, in essence, a rock concert. So you get some Christian music in there, and then it starts in with the whole thing. Almost an hour or 45 minutes is a homily, in essence, where the pastor gets up and talks about whatever he's going to talk about that day, usually some sort of a Bible verse, and then back to the rock concert again, and then you're done. It's all done in about an hour. I was there one time when they actually did communion. They had special single serving pieces of communion, which had two tiers. One of them was the bread or the crackers, whatever it was. One of them was the juice. And in this sort of little box, it's sort of sealed, and you get your own piece, and they hand them out. Nobody blessed anything. And it was kind of like, take your own communion kind of thing, and then beat it, grab a coffee on the way out. So it was very different than what I'm used to in terms of Christianity, which is why I ask, there are no metaphysics there, not that I can tell, right? So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, you do need some kind of metaphysical understanding. Otherwise, a lot of people, when they go to church, they're just going through the motions. Why do you go to church? Well, because my parents made me, because we went every week when I was younger, because we're supposed to. Why do you receive Holy Communion? Because we're supposed to. Mm-hmm. Okay? I believe that without metaphysics, you're just going through the motions. You are just doing it because that's what you've always done. Once you have a metaphysical understanding, the understanding of beyond what you can physically see in that church, it definitely will strengthen your faith. Like I said, when you understand that it is not symbolic, when you're blessing, that bread and that wine, when you understand it is truly God on earth, okay, you need to understand that, and understand that when a priest, and when I say laying of hands, or which me, it's like, healing touch, I never, hands over, but never touching. When a priest heals, okay, you need to understand what is happening. Is that priest some kind of special guy because, oh my gosh, he healed me? No. I've done healings, some small, some surprising, and I tell people, you know what? I'm just a blunt instrument. I'm just a vessel. Okay? You need to understand the metaphysics to understand that something is being given to me, the grace of God, by the grace of God, and I am giving it to that person. So I am sharing it with them. So it's not me. It's something that's beyond me. And I'm going to tell you something else, because, and this is always something one of my superiors talks about when he talks about authentic faith, and he talks about the true parts of our religion. And I mentioned the sacrament of Holy Communion. Okay. And I also consecrate holy water. I will bless houses. I've got some baptisms coming up. I did a wedding. You always need holy water. It's always nice to have. But you got to have a priest who is properly ordained. Okay. And I will tell you one thing. 2.5 years ago, when I was ordained, and for everybody out there that's watching this, when I was finally able to clear my mind and hear what was being said to me, okay, yeah, I was a little bit older, okay, but all right, here's some part of the mysticism that people need to understand. And when I say you respect a person of the clergy, you may not respect them as a person, but you respect them for what they carry. So I took a trip a couple of years ago, and I went to my ordination. And at my ordination, 3 bishops put their hands on me. Now, Pentecost, Jesus Christ rose from the dead. He breathed the Holy Spirit onto his apostles. Go forth, preach, raise the dead, heal the sick. Okay, go out there. And then those apostles, what did they do? Well, they got old. There's a lot of space to cover. They started consecrating more clergy. And it goes down through the ages. So when I say Apostolic Orthodox Church, with the Eastern Apostolic Orthodox Church, that's apostolic too. There is a line that comes down from generation to generation, passing on that beautiful gift that was given to the original 12. Okay, and then 2,000 years later, guess who gets in line? Me. Okay, and if you don't understand mysticism, and if you don't understand what was given, and I will be honest with you, somebody could have told me 100 times over what the definition of apostolic succession means, but until you go through it, you have no idea what it involves. Okay?
Okay.
So you need to understand, and by the way, as one candle lights another, and the flame is never diminished, that gift has not been diminished ever since the original 12. Okay, so you can imagine after my ordination, I'm sitting there in my hotel room, in my chair, just like, wow, oh my. It's like beyond comprehension. If I didn't have any understanding for any kind of mysticism, that would have just been some kind of symbolic ceremony. But I learned that what really happened there, what I could not physically see with my eyes. Okay? And I will tell you, this proof of this, well, I can tell you, parts of my personality disappeared. And they weren't really good parts. I mean, I wasn't a great person a few years ago. Good, not particularly great. And I will tell you another thing, too. 2.5 years ago, my beard was gray. Now it comes in pure white. Okay? So, yes, and I have no intention of coloring it, because I know why it happened.
Okay.
All right.
I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on why that happened.
So, like I said, this affected me. And, but without that knowledge, for that understanding of, some kind of metaphysical, that mysticism, that all of that wonderful part of our faith that we cannot see, if you don't not even understand it, respect it, and acknowledge it, you're taking so much away from your own faith. Okay? Acknowledge that which you cannot see. Acknowledge that which goes beyond our senses. It will make you a much better Christian, and it'll make you a much better Jew or Buddhist or Muslim, whatever your faith is. Acknowledge that which goes beyond us in our physical understanding.
I appreciate your answer there. That is really cool, and just what a wonderful way to think about not only Christianity but any religion in that respect. David.
Pat, one thing I was going to ask. So obviously, it seems like people go through the motions. You're alluding to the fact that there's so many that go to church. We've seen it so many times. People just go through the motions. They're not really getting the concept of inviting deity. And how would you say in today's world, I think our listeners, for the most part, are probably more in tune with the mysticism. But if somebody's not, what would you recommend? Where do they start? How do they get to that point where they can reconnect and reintegrate with God?
Well, you know what? First thing, when you pray, take the time to think about the words that you're saying. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Okay? So, as you go through the words in your prayers, take some time, look at them, think about them, meditate on them. And you know what? Now I'm going to say this. Meditation, where prayer is when we speak to God, meditation is when we listen. Okay, I want you to take some time. And this is where, like Roman Catholics, they love to do that adoration of the Holy Sacrament. They will take some time, sit there, and stare upon a single piece of the Holy Eucharist. Take some time, look at it, think about it, contemplate it, realize what it is. Meditation, I think, is the key. When we pray, we speak to God. When we meditate, we listen. Quiet your mind. Think about what you do in church, why you do it, the origin for it. Okay? Think about what's happening. Think about the words that you say. And, I have this other term. It's not my term. It's a beautiful term, though, because like some people, and they may go through the motions, or sometimes they may say, how do I pray? Well, okay. How about this? Prayer of the heart. Sometimes the most magnificent and powerful prayers that a person could ever say is speaking to God in their own words. I don't remember how to say the Our Father. How do you do the rosary? How about this? Speak to God. Take some time when you're quiet. I have a very good friend of the Hebrew faith, and he reminds me of something. There's a term that the Jewish people use to refer to God. Abba. Father. So, basically, God wants a relation. It's about a relationship. So you know what? When you pray from the heart. Abba, Father, I'm having a terrible day. I'm scared. I'm worried about my family. I'm worried about my children. I don't know what I'm going to do. Am I going to have enough money to survive? I'm having health problems. Speak to him with your heart. The words, your own words from you. Okay, so take some time to meditate. Take some time to speak to Christ, to God in your own words, and take some time to listen. Now, I'm going to mention one more thing because on this written test I had to take to become a priest, about 105 questions, multiple parts, took me a few months, and it was saying which of the following, and there was a list of terms, and it's like which of these terms, which one of these philosophical reasonings would you use to prove the existence of God? And I chose one that was called the deontological reasoning. And basically what that means is, and a study of nature, look at a sunset, smell a flower, listen to the song of a bird, smell the grass, the plants, the trees in the springtime. Let your senses take in what is around you, okay? And understand that did not come about by accident. That the only way all of this came about, that we came about, is because of God.
That's lovely.
Sure.
Yeah.
A question for you. You alluded to it before. Setting up protection in your house. Do you feel it's a necessity for an individual to protect themselves when they're praying and when they're meditating, when they're practicing that mindfulness? And if so, what would you recommend?
Well, I tell you, as far as praying, now I will tell you, I have by my front door, I do have a dream catcher. I have a lady friend, I'm allowed to, and she's Indigenous American, so I have a dream catcher. I have a mezuzah, and I have a crucifix.
Boy, you cover all your bases,
Always
don't you?
have all those. What's that?
You cover all your bases.
Got the whole gamut.
But I realize there's two people in this world. People that the devil, people that Satan wants, and people that Satan already has. Okay? And I found out, kind of like afterwards, nobody tells you this before ordination, that all of a sudden you become a lot more interesting to those, to the great deceiver. Okay. So, I mean, what do? Okay. You know what I have by my front door. And here's something very simple that a person can do. 1, kosher salt. Okay. I keep a small amount of it in the 4 corners of my home. All right. And along with it, and you could get these little bracelets, like 2 pair for $10. On here, there's obsidian, there's hematite, and there's tiger's eye. So you take one of them, you cut it apart, you take at least one of each sewn, and put that in the 4 corners, along with the salt. Okay? And that'll protect you while you're in the home. I wear the bracelet when I go out. I like to carry a little bag of kosher salt on me, but if I ever get frisked, forget it, I'm cooked. Okay, so I will put little packets of, salt from the fast food place in the pocket. Okay, so I'll carry those with me for protection. And I will tell you one little secret I found out. I have a friend, I believe Alex knows who he is too. I'm not going to mention his name. I believe him to be a very powerful empath, very sensitive to thoughts and emotions of others. Okay? And he came to my apartment one day. We were going to watch a movie, hang out. And, he comes to the door, happy, energetic. Hi, Pat, how you doing? Sits down. 2 minutes later, he's asleep. Okay? And why? Because the house is shielded. For an empath, probably about as powerful as he is, it's like constantly being in a room with 100 people, like shouting and yelling. And then when he walked into the apartment and all of it was shielded, all of a sudden he walked into a quiet, like, library, and he finally had some peace.
Uh-huh.
And a couple months ago, he leans in to me and he goes, "By the way, do you realize you have 2 auras?" And I look at him and I'm like, I'm ordained, right? You know what I carry? Oh, yeah. So basically, learning to shield his home, learning to have that peace allowed him to develop. Okay? So I honestly believe if you're empathic, and by the way, one homily that I did one day, God gives us all gifts. Okay? He makes some of us seers, some speak in tongues, some healers. So if I say that, he's empathic, he's sensitive to emotions, first of all, Satan doesn't give gifts. He takes. He deceives. The only gift you can get. Okay? So I believe that's his gift.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I say a person is gifted, and by the way, when Alex said, Brian Bowden, as far as a remote viewer, I am blessed. I know 3 different remote viewers. So if I ever need to find someone, I know who to talk to. And
Well, we'd like to have
how can that be?
We'd like to have Carl Petrie on the show as well. Of course, he's just very busy right now. He's got a new series coming out, or a new season to his series, and then a new book coming out. So it's very busy time for Carl.
a 3rd book. That'll be wonderful.
I think so.
Yes, I remember the.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
And I remember one day I get a message. They were going to do to pitch an idea to a television station. You can't just say, "Hey, this is my idea." So he had to put like 3 episodes together, and there was one episode from a part of his life of an event that took place inside of a Masonic lodge. So I was called that day. "Hey, Pat, you want to come and help out?" So I was an extra that day. It was fun. I love behind the scenes. And he brought a lot of colleagues with him. And we had some very, very interesting, enlightening conversations that day.
Lovely.
So, and I remember the one night he invited all of us to come down and watch the 3 episodes he put together. It was a lot of fun.
So
Very cool.
I'm hoping Dave can get us into more of the paranormal stuff, because he's our paranormal expert on the show. So all the stuff that I know Pat and I have chatted about, demons, ghosts, goblins, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So take it away, Dave.
Wow, just put me on the spot there. The gobbledygook.
Sure.
I'm right in time for Halloween, right?
Absolutely.
Well, let's first start with Pat. I know we had this brief discussion the other day. How can somebody identify if there's some kind of entity or an attachment to them that's negative, and what could they do to kind of ward that off from your perspective?
Okay, well, here's the interesting part. I mentioned, now listen, as an Orthodox priest, I'm allowed to get married. I have a lady friend. She is Indigenous American. She's a priestess. She's a healer. We actually go on healings together, and she can detect attachments. Now, the first thing to notice is that if somebody who's in good health, you start noticing that they're weak, their energy is being drained, that physical manifestation, or did you ever have a moment when, for some reason, you were angry and you could not figure out why? And that's like, and when I say attachment, when somebody is possessed, the entity is inside them. The attachment, much like it sounds, is like a leech. It's on you. And sometimes that supernatural leech is not very good, so it's like intermittent. Okay? So if you notice a person's energy draining for no good reason whatsoever, if a person is angry, you yourself, you're angry for no good reason whatsoever, okay, there might be a problem. Now, I'm going to tell you, I read a book a few years ago, Psychic Self-Defense.
Oh.
And it was about this woman that joined an occult Christian order and all of the things that were happening. And I almost came up with a flow chart of what you should do if you think either yourself or another person has an attachment or may be possessed. And the first thing you need to do is rule out physical ailments. Make sure the doctor gives you the green light. The other thing is, a lot of us are stressed. Couldn't hurt to talk to a psychologist. Make sure you're okay. All right? Rule the part of it out that's you. Okay? Now, here's two things you can do. Now, and I combine them. One is kosher salt. Okay, and by the way, really expensive. I get this at the $1.25 store. So consider salt scrubs once a week, okay? Or bathing in salt water. Or the other thing is to change your location temporarily. Now, it's kind of interesting because every year I still feel the need to go to someplace warm and tropical. Love the island of Jamaica. There's something mystical about that island. You have to love a place with more churches per capita than any other country in the world. But what do? I combine two treatments. One is to temporarily change your location, telling only a couple of people. So go somewhere. Tell a couple of people your emergency contact or whatever. And salt baths. So what am I doing? I'm floating in the ocean for like hours, like out of the day. So I'm getting the salt bath. The ionization of the salt removes the energy of any entity and the change in location. A good thing to do. So go away someplace. Bring the salt with you. Do a salt scrub in the shower. It will help to get rid of those entities.
And is there a common test? The other day you alluded to there's a test where you could even take water or a glass of water at home. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Well, I will tell you one thing that I do. Well, first of all, testing for entities. Let's see. Well, I will tell you, like, for example, right over here on the shelf is a bottle of water that I'm not going to drink myself. What do I do with it? Remember I told you about exorcising things, taking the evil out of things. Well, that's just prayer, okay? And that's just praying over something, removing the evil from it. So what I do, and I will tell you, with me, the energy lately, like right now, the hands, they're burning, okay? I've got a little bit of extra energy on me. So what I'm going to do is reach right over here, plain ordinary bottle of water. and I'm going to pray upon it. I'm going to cast energy into it. And then I'm going to have, if there's a person who is sick, I'm going to give this bottle of water to a sick person. Okay? What's the worst thing you can do? It's a bottle of water. Okay? But it's exorcised, it's blessed. It has the energy that I'm allowed to be a vessel for, to imbue upon it. And I will give that to them. Okay? So you can pray upon anything. And I saw this book I have to get, the Big Book of Exorcisms. You can pray upon anything to exorcise it. You can do an exorcism prayer on a person. If you're not sure, what's the worst thing that can happen? You prayed upon a healthy person. But if you really believe that there is an issue with them, you can do an exorcism type prayer. And I will tell you, if it's a full-on exorcism, like exorcism prayers rid a person of illness, of injury. If it's a full-on exorcism, that's something I'm not really willing to mess with yet, or ever.
So when you're saying a full-on exorcism, you're talking about a demonic presence that possessed that person.
Right. So like I mentioned, I've got a friend who he has an exorcism order for Canada, and he has this offer for $1,500. I can teach you how to do exorcisms. And I'm like, nope. I mean, I follow what he does and I listen to what he says, but to me, no part of that is a good idea. Okay. Why don't I watch horror movies is because I know there are greater horrors upon this earth that people don't realize are happening. Okay. So, yes, you can, there are people that can exorcise demons from people. There are people that can remove attachments. There are simple exorcism prayers that you can pray over a person that will help them. You can exorcise like a piece of food, a piece of bread, and make it clean and imbue it with, God's grace and give it to a person, and it will heal them. So a lot of things you can do. Some things I am just clearly not ready for yet.
And to that end, it seems like, I know there's a thought in the paranormal realm that you really shouldn't speak the name of certain demons, or you shouldn't say names out loud. You shouldn't mess with Ouija boards, things of that nature. Can you elaborate on that from your perspective?
Oh boy, could I. Okay. First of all, when I see these Ouija boards advertised or in the toy store, 8 years enough to conjure up some demon. Okay. First of all,
remember, kids, you're 7 or under. Don't mess with it.
Right. So, yeah, when the Barbie movie came out, somebody did a picture of a Barbie Ouija board. I'm like, come on, Barbie's demonic enough.
Yeah, right.
Okay. But what you're calling forth with the Ouija board, okay, some people may think that if that actually reacts, you've contacted a relative that has passed on. No. You've called for something that is pretending to be a relative. Do not mess with Ouija boards. No. Okay? Now, as far as the names of, and by the way, this is something Brother Brian Bowden mentioned to me. Now, let's see. I'm going to show you a little gift that was given to me for my ordination. Okay? Demons, entities.
Uh-huh.
And this is only like part of the collection.
Yes.
I got a couple more folks here too. Okay, put that there. Now, I'm going to start with going to mention a little story. Did you ever see a movie called The Craft a few years ago?
Yes.
Those
Yes.
Catholic school, New Witch comes to town. Okay, there's a scene. And when they get off the bus, be careful. There's a lot of weirdos out here. And the girl says, we are the weirdos. They go to the beach to invoke an entity. Now, even as a younger person, they lost me when they said, well, if God and the devil are fighting, so-and-so is the field that they're fighting on. They tried to imply that something is out there is greater than God. No. But okay, I go with the rest of the movie. So they go to the beach, and they bring things with them, and they're trying to do the four corners and invoke the name of this entered this great entity. Now, for the purposes of the movie, the entity was fictitious. They made up a name, but they didn't realize that the name was close to the name of a water entity. Okay? Now, what happened is, and you can even see this in some of the scenes, it's raining. It was supposed to be a very clear night when they went out there to film. Yet every time they started to film a scene and they mentioned a name that was close to the water entity, it started to rain. Okay? So don't mention the names out loud. Okay? If you read them, good. Don't read them out loud. Be careful. All right? You may be getting to, it's basically like, okay, I'm in the next room. I call out your name. You're like, oh, and you come over to see what's going on.
Right.
Same thing. You say a name, that entity will come through the veil. All right. So don't, if you read it, don't say the names out loud. And I will tell you, that's where people get in trouble. See, the couple days before I was ordained, I had to go down to Pascagoula, Mississippi. And a brother helped me. He let me use his timeshare one night in New Orleans. So here I am dressed like, and I'm in New Orleans for a night. So they tell me, oh, there's a new restaurant. Walk down Decatur Avenue a few blocks. You'll find it. It's a nice place. It really was. But on my way down, I passed 3 different witchcraft shops. Or more accurately, I went inside 3 different witchcraft shops. Just did not hard to find down there. Go in, look around. And I'm like, ooh, incense. Maybe they want that for the ordination. Maybe they wouldn't want it in this place. So these cute little crochet dolls. I'm like, oh, wow, they're voodoo dolls. Put it back. The third store I went into, and this is how horror movies start. These 4 young ladies walk in their 20s, and they're like, oh, what's this? Ooh, what's this? They walk toward the books, the rack of books on the wall. Books they should not make. They shouldn't be reading to begin with. And definitely should not be reading out loud. That's the part of the horror movie where they're having a slumber party. And they're like, ooh, let's turn out the lights. Let's light a candle. Let's read the book. Hey, let's read this poem. No. Be careful what you say out loud. You don't know what you are invoking.
Now, you bring a good point up. Clearly, there is magic with a CK. High magic, Abramelin the Mage, Lesser Keys of Solomon, Greater Keys of Solomon, those types of things, voodoo, hoodoo, and all of these other types, shamanistic magic, and so on. I'd like to make a distinction, if I could, between some of the shamanistic entities, if you want to call them that, Kirik Sanango, Noya Rao, Bobinsana, some of the plant-based entities that exist, and some of the demons. I think to a great extent, even Saint Bridget was the rebranding, so to speak, of a more ancient Celtic deity. And a bunch of others have done that, where they've sort of taken the old religions and repackaged them and said, well, you believed in this? Oh, we got another one named blah, blah, blah that's in the Christian religion. So you're not missing out on anything. We'll just, we'll make a saint out of them or whatever it is. And I think we get into trouble doing some of that kind of stuff because it's we try to take the power of it and put it into a repackaged state of like where Christianity takes on all comers kind of thing. What are your thoughts on that, especially as being an esoteric person?
Well, okay. When Emperor Constantine took Christianity and made the Roman Catholic faith, he decided to incorporate a lot of pagan elements. A lot of the beautiful cathedrals that you see in downtown Rome were formerly pagan houses of worship. So he incorporates a lot of things. He incorporates a lot of, the big argument. Well, Christ was not born in the winter. Okay, well, because it was to basically be equated to another holiday. So yeah, they try to incorporate these things without the full understanding of what they mean. And some people might be getting into, like I said, getting into more trouble than they realize. So, some things that people try to incorporate, not good. And when you mentioned, like, for example, I had a copy of the Ars Naturalis, Solomon's special prayers. Okay. And I read through that. I remember, because, I have a little problem with the ticker. One time I'm in an emergency room and I decided, you know what, that's a pretty good time to bring up the first prayer for healing. Okay. But that was Solomon's prayers. No harm there. But some of the things people try to, like, for example, the book Transcendental Magic. It's an interesting read as far as anything magical, putting into practice. I probably would not try anything.
Are you familiar with the Gallery of Magic series?
No, I'm afraid not.
Dennis Poisson from the Foolish Fish podcast / YouTube page. He's got a very interesting YouTube page filled with, he comes from a pretty magical background. Fascinating guy. Trying to get him on the podcast. He's very, very busy. So we'll keep trying. I'm sure we'll get him on sooner or later. But he talks about that it's they've sort of made magic more accessible, because one of the things with magic is it's very complicated. It has a lot of rules. It has a lot of symbology. You need to learn Enochian or other such things. Are you familiar at all with that type of thing, like the Enochian language, which they call the language of the angels, or potentially demonic language, or other things like that?
One of the books that I have that I'm going to get to with the reading is the Book of Enoch that I'm looking forward to. And the story of Enoch is actually quite interesting. And gee, no wonder at the First Council of Nicaea they decided to make that one of the books that they ripped out of the Bible. But no, I do not know about Enochian magic. And like I said, I would have to take some time to read it, study it, understand it. But as far as putting it into practice, I'm not sure I would. I'm not sure I would get everything perfect.
I think that's probably.
I think Bowden alluded to that too, because he on his podcast he did discuss that. I guess he had a friend that was trying to speak the Enochian language and kind of screwed it up, and essentially had a couple of years worth of issues because of that. So it's certainly something you don't want to dabble with if you're not doing it right.
Right. You got to be careful. I mean, little things that people do. And it's interesting because I'm on vacation one year and I'm talking to this couple, and they had something in their backyard, a fairy garden. And it's just a little area of the yard that nobody touches. And they put little trinkets and different things in the yard to attract positive entities. And then one day the landscapers cleaning up the yard, the grass was quite tall there, and they just cut all of it. And not realizing what they were doing, the one guy that cut the grass, all of a sudden he starts having runs of misfortune. Okay, so realizing what was happening, when the couple decided to reestablish said fairy garden, he said, I really want to give something to put in this garden. What do you recommend? He did. The garden was reestablished and the misfortune ceased.
Yes.
So, you got to be real careful with this stuff. And as far as mispronouncing, I'll be bound to mispronounce something, and then here comes trouble. So, I would stay away from it. I would read it to understand it, but I don't think I would put it into practice. Too difficult.
I suppose that's true. Do you have any personal experiences or stories about the supernatural, or other ghosts, demons, anything else you've encountered that's something that comes to mind that was particularly, really out there? Kind of, I couldn't be mistaken, in other words, for anything else?
Well, I thought it was interesting because, let's see, I know the one time I went on a paranormal investigation of one of the lodge buildings with Brother Brian, and he brought me along as, bait.
Bait. That's nice.
And it turned out the lodge was very, very active.
Mm-hmm.
But I've noticed that, like, when all the entities that we see, they're in the form of orbs.
Uh-huh.
Now, the interesting thing that I'm finding out, sometimes I turn my head like, oh, there's a fly in my apartment. And I'm like, in my house. And wait a minute, that's not a fly. It's too big. I could swear it was in the form of an orb. I know that, my third installation is Master of Wyckoff Lodge. First of all, by some strange coincidence, everyone at that table is gifted in one form or another. And my lady friend said, "Who's Claude?" I said, I'm not sure. I don't know. And she said, "He seems very nice." She detected an entity. And then we go upstairs to the lodge room. There's a picture there of a guy I've seen 100 times, like the first master in that building. And I'm like, "Hey, Claude, how are you?" I see you've met Christine. But Christine said something, and a few people saw it, that as I'm taking my oath at the altar, an orb flies past.
Wow.
And I was told, yeah, Claude wanted to wish you luck. Okay. So apparently I've interacted with entities. I'm not at the level where I see things. I mean, one time I'm talking to a woman at the one of the resorts I was at, and very nice person. You know, interesting job. She walks around cutting fruit, giving it to people all day long, and selling her gospel CD. And I'm talking to her, and it's something very strange and familiar about her. And we were talking for a while, and then she walks away, and I'm like, was I just talking to my grandmother, my deceased grandmother?
Yes.
There are interactions I have with people that, wait a minute, are they, who was I really talking to? So, but I know that, as I was told, I'm never alone. I know there's a lot close by with me. I just don't see it yet.
I don't think anybody's ever alone in this world. I think people don't realize that, and to some, ignorance is bliss. But I think most of us have an entourage in a sense, you know, whether it's a couple entities or, you know, might be departed individuals, or, you know, to your point, even there might be individuals or souls that are associated to, you know, a particular building or place, you know, that are kind of stuck in that space. I know even my own lodge, there's definitely entities that are still there and interact from time to time. So,
yes. I remember Brian saying, a very dear friend, excuse me a second, I want to make sure my phone doesn't give out on me, plugging it somewhere else. Sorry. There was a very dear brother that had passed away, and his remains are at a lodge, Fidelity Lodge in Ridgewood.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the night,
Brother Zach.
the last time Carl Petrie was there. What's
Brother
that?
Zach.
Yes, it was Brother Zach. Yes. And Carl is giving his talk, and all of a sudden, Brian nudges me. And I know what that means. Zach walked into the room. And all I know is we go downstairs for dessert afterwards. And all I know is, for some reason, something I never would have picked for dessert, I ended up having because I just had to have it. And it was a piece of cake. And I know the way Zach loved cake. I'm like, wait a minute, was he talking about that to me and I didn't even know it? And all of a sudden now I want to have it. But yeah, we interact. There's a lot more around us, good and not so good. We need to be aware of it.